name is Nora Esram, CEO of New Buildings Institute, as Sean introduced. Today, I would like to talk about building codes, what is at stake, and some of the major trends we're seeing right now, and where I think the field is headed next. Building energy codes may not be as exciting as many emerging technologies like what Jen just presented. Well, they are the defaults, the rules that should work quietly in the background. However, I can't remember another period in my career when the direction of building codes felt both so important and so uncertain. So after talking with Sean, I think I decided to just talk about the codes because across the country, we're hearing growing concerns about affordability, grid reliability, and resilience. My main message today is simple. Building energy codes will continue to play a significant role in achieving our climate goals, but they will need to evolve beyond energy efficiency. For those who may not know NBI, we are a national nonprofit organization that has been advancing high performance building, energy codes, and policy for nearly 3 decades. Our mission is to unlock the power of buildings to transform energy system and improve lives. That mission increasingly requires us to think beyond efficiency and consider how buildings interact with electric grid, public health, resilience, and decarbonization. I'm going to unpack that in my conversation today. Well, a little bit of history. When we look at the history of building energy codes, we can see a clear evolution. In the 1970s, the focus was simply energy efficiency in response to energy crisis. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, cost savings had become major objectives of energy codes. In the 2010s, codes started incorporating renewable energy readiness and supporting clean energy transitions. Then the 2021 generation of codes expanded into demand response and grid interactive efficient buildings. And today, we are entering yet another phase. We're increasingly asked how energy codes can support resilience, reduce health and safety risks during extreme weather events, and contribute to broader energy system goals. I want to focus on 3 challenges that I think will shape the future of codes: cost effectiveness, complexity, and what many people describe as competing priorities we're facing today. Let's start with cost effectiveness. For decades, we have relied on various metrics to measure cost effectiveness in national model codes. Life cycle cost, simple payback, cash flows, saving to investment ratio. But notice what is missing. These methods do not fully capture resilience benefits, health outcomes, great value, and social benefits. The question is no longer whether a measure saves energy. The question is whether we are measuring the full value it creates. Some states have already started expanding their analysis. New York includes social effects and social cost of carbon. Washington has incorporated social cost of carbon in public building decision. California evaluates cost of emission and impacts on transmission and distribution cost. These examples suggest a gradual move towards a broader definitions of value. At the same time, the Department of Energy now is taking the opposite direction and tries to narrow the definition. They have released an RFI, request for information, seeking comments on their new approach. Let me summarize here. Their approach places greater emphasis on first cost. The distinction matters because efficiency measures often cost more upfront but save substantially more over their lifetime. If you only look at the initial price, many high performance measures with lifetime benefits to consumers suddenly appear less attractive. The RFI also proposed to use shorter analysis periods, higher discount rates, and greater reliance on simple payback. Each of those choices tends to reduce the parent value of long-lived efficiency investment. It's like telling consumers when buying a car, focus only on what matters in the first few years. Good tires, perhaps, but not a good engine because we assume everybody will sell the car in a few years. Whoever will buy that car, good luck. That's how I see it. So it isn't just a technical debate. These assumptions ultimately determine what measures are considered acceptable in future model codes. And then there is the bigger question. Should code analysis value resilience? Should they value public health? Should they value emission reductions and grid benefits? Depending on how we answer those questions, we can reach very different conclusions about what constitutes a cost-effective code. Let's not forget that codes and regulations exist to protect shared public benefits, not just individual paybacks. We are seeing the practical consequences of this kind of debates around codes and housing shortage and affordability. Here are the actions in some of the leading states. New York paused implementation of its All-Electric Building Act. California paused residential energy codes update and limited local REACH codes. Delaware declined to adopt a proposed net zero capable requirement originally enacted 17 years ago. Vermont introduced flexibility allow compliance with older energy codes, and Hawaii suspended their state building code council's authority to adopt newer codes, despite Hawaii has some of the highest energy costs in the country. The common argument is that deregulation will make housing development faster and cheaper. That may sound right on the surface, but the real question is what is actually slowing down housing development and driving up prices? A University of Alabama study published last month looked at home sales from 2011 to 2022. It examined 45 adoptions of newer residential building codes, the 2009, 2012, 2015, 2018 International Residential Codes across 26 states. The findings do not support a claim that modern building codes consistently raising home prices or reduce new housing supply. The answer to affordable housing challenge is not simply to loosen regulations. It is to fix the real bottlenecks. That means speeding up plan review and permitting with digital and automated tools so codes officials have less manual work. It also means giving builders and designers the training and technical assistance they need to shorten the learning curve because time is money and mistakes cost even more. That brings us the second challenge. Codes are getting more complex. In response to growing complexity, codes organizations are attempting to simplify. Ironically, some of these efforts may actually create additional complexity. The proposed split between the base IECC and the expanded IECC illustrates this attention. The base IECC will have much narrower scope, and IECC expanded carries many advanced measures as optional pathways or appendices. For jurisdictions trying to adopt ambitious policies, separating measures into various appendices and alternative pathways can make adoption and enforcement more challenging, not less. ASHRAE is now developing a low-rise residential minimum energy standards as part of their 90.1, which is traditionally focusing on commercial buildings. Residential standards is an area dominated currently by IECC. The intent is to develop a minimum standard for an affordable housing solution, but another standard may increase the number of documents, pathways, and compliance structures that practitioners, codes officials, and builders must navigate. The proposal is currently under public review. You can look it up if you're interested in looking into it or getting your voice heard, and you can submit your comment directly. If you want to hear what our thoughts are, and feel free to reach out to us. All right, so let's talk about priorities and value now. People often describe today's debates as competing priorities, but I don't think that's the right framing. We have energy efficiency, electrification, carbon reduction, resilience, and grid interaction. They are not necessarily competing goals for resources. The bigger issue is that they are often pursued through separate policy mechanisms. That fragmentation is especially concerning as preemption laws expand in scope and limit the ability of jurisdictions to pursue their climate goals. We need to think not only about how to bundle funding to finance these measures, but also how to stack benefits to show that the whole is greater than the sum of its part. That is why we are developing an integrated approach for the next generation of net zero emission buildings. The objective is to connect work that's already underway and provide a structure that helps policymakers understand how these pieces fit together. Rather than asking whether efficiency, electrification, or carbon reduction should win, we can ask how they work together to support a reliable, affordable, or clean energy system. Let me explain what that integration or alignment looks like. Let's talk about load management first. The next generation of net zero codes cannot keep adding requirements into one policy silo. We need better coordinations. We need better coordinations across at least three areas that are usually handled by different departments. First, utility regulation, especially renewable portfolio standards or RPS. Second, building performance standards or BPS, which are often managed by city sustainability offices. And third, new construction codes, which are typically administrated by building departments. The challenge is that these systems are all trying to shape the same building, the same energy system, but they're not designed to work together. One example is how new codes interact with utility renewable performance standards. The issue of renewable energy certificates or RECs shows why coordination matters. The 2021 and 2024 IECC require building owners to retire RECs so that renewable generation is not double counted. That requirement is well intentioned and is a good start, but as written, it can also create an unproductive tension. Utilities may want building owners with rooftop solar to sell the REC so the utility can count it towards its RPS obligation. At the same time, the code may require building owners to retire REC for compliance. That puts two policy systems in conflict, not because the goals are wrong, but because they were not designed together. The lesson we learned for our first generation of net zero codes is that the next generation needs more carefully alignment across utility programs, building performance policy, and new construction codes. The same principle applies to resilience. Buildings are increasingly expected to provide safe indoor conditions during grid outages, extremely heat, wildfire smoke events, and other disruptions. Energy codes have traditionally focused on the passive survivability aspect of resilience when they talk about it, so they can promote stronger building envelope measures. If you look at building safety codes, they require backup generation for critical function, and those requirements are often met with diesel generators. And if you look at actually the international building codes, it specifies that buildings are now supposed to be habitable during those extreme events. The backup generation is just for 1 hours maybe for people to be able to get out of the facility. We know during extreme weather events, this is not always the case. From a grid perspective, the value of demand set measures is less about overall energy reduction. I think Jen alluded to in her presentation too. Utility care more about peak load reduction. If on-site renewables and batteries are used to provide backup power for safety, those same investments can provide grid services. And when they are paired with better envelope design, building can reduce the amount of emergency power they need while still maintaining safe indoor conditions for longer time period. This is about shelter in place. It's not pushing people outside of the building during outages. So that's really the core of the definition of energy resilience we're trying to introduce in our next generation of building codes. There are three components. They need to work together. So resilience is no longer be treated as an optional add-on. It's becoming a core element of high-performance buildings going forward. Embodied carbon. Embodied carbon is entering the codes conversation in the past years, but an effective approach is not simply to add another requirement for developers, owners, or designers. The right approach is to balance embodied carbon and operational carbon in a coherent way. In regions where the grid is getting cleaner, embodied carbon represents a growing share of a building's life cycle emission. We need to start talking about it and putting the requirement out so people have time to think about it to comply. But in regions where the grid is still very carbon intensive, such as parts of the Midwest, we need to make sure buildings are efficient first. The other point I want to make is from a global emission perspective, the embodied carbon of buildings is the direct carbon footprint of industrial and transportation sectors. Buildings are not only consumers of energy, they're also major consumers of materials. If the building sector creates demand for low carbon materials, that demand can ripple through supply chains and help drive decarbonizations across other sectors. Those are the benefits that building energy codes do not yet fully account. And finally, public health. So for years, we have known that building affect public health through both direct on-site combustion and energy consumption, especially when fossil fuel power plants are located near vulnerable communities. Building codes can reduce primary pollutants by lowering energy use and supporting electrification. But those benefits are often invisible in traditional codes analysis. That's why our team just released the Energy Policy Health Impacts Calculator. It's based on EPA study. This is to help policymakers understand and quantify this relationship. Once we measure those benefits and they're more visible, it becomes much harder to argue that energy cost savings are the only outcome that matters to people. So, where does this leave us? I believe the future of energy codes is not about choosing between efficiency, affordability, resilience, decarbonization, or electrification goals. It's about creating governance structure and frameworks that allow those objectives to work together. That's a conversation we'll continue to have at our own conference this October. I hope you can join us there. If you need more information, feel free to reach out to me. I will leave you with one final thought. The question we're facing in our field for people who care about decarbonization is no longer how much energy or carbon can we save? The question should be, what role should buildings play in creating an affordable, healthy, and resilient future? If we answer that question well through our energy codes or other decarbonization work, we can make meaningful progress faster because we will be solving real problems that matter to the average consumer, homeowner, and business owner, not just those who already care about climate. Thank you for listening. If you're interested in learning more about our work, we do a lot of other work beyond codes, and you can follow us on social media, sign up our newsletter, or just reach out to me, our staff. I would say we need to be more coordinated, more united, and more focused on the shared outcomes building can deliver. That concluded my presentation. With that, I'm going to head back to you, Sean.